Teamwork.
Good team effort. You good? Okay. Going to call the council and committee meeting to order for February 14th, Valentine's Day, 2023. And we're running a few minutes behind with a little small technical glitch that our team managed to work through. So we're going to throw it right to Toby immediately to the finance administration. And I think Director of Finance, Kristen's in on this one too, correct, Toby?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Happy Valentine's Day, everyone. Glad that you're all here with us instead of only cakes for bringing some. This is a project that the Director of Finance and myself has worked on, and I thought I'd just give you a little background on the sponsorship file. So the sponsorship file was kind of come under my mandate a couple of years ago when we were getting numerous letters to the municipality asking for support in different things. And under the tourism file, I had MOUs with some of these organizations, so kind of looked at some of the other little ones in the meantime. The first piece in your package is the current financial donation policy that was done in 2001. There's some criteria that's underneath of it, the eligibility, and of course it's all in capital letters. So what we're proposing is replacing this policy with a updated one. The next piece on page 5 is the application for sponsorship that we currently have. These are some of the sponsorships that we've received over the past couple of years. Basically, we'd like for them to give us a full budget breakdown in a financial statement on how they've spent our money after their event or grant, and also a list of board members and contact information, and this is usually for nonprofits. So then we get in, I'm going to skip a couple pages to the policy actually, because the first schedules are just the application forms. So we did some research and we looked at some other municipalities on the sponsorship policy. As you can see, it's pretty straightforward. It's broken down into 3 different types. One is a grant, which Kristen and I spoke about today. A grant is kind of like if someone was looking to build something or get a capital item, like a stage or bleachers or something like that. And this is where the grant would come into, because it would be actually a piece of something. The next one is the actual sponsorship in itself, which is, sorry, I'm kind of going all over the place here on it. Schedule A, and that is on the sponsorships that we do now. So if there was a organization looking for an event or to help sponsor, if there was a provincial team or a Atlantic team or something like that was looking for legal assistance, that we currently do not go into that sponsorship. And then the last one we have is the in-kind, which is when people are asking for donations of, say, space, like the Air Motor Center facility, or some of the other parks and stuff we don't charge currently, but if we did with the grants, we actually I guess I'll let Kristen speak a little bit on the financial things that we spoke of earlier.
Yeah, so I'll first say that Toby says she basically has taken the lead on all of this. I have not really been, other than conversations about kind of monetary things, but she put together the draft sponsorship policy, and kind of just me giving some information or my thoughts of view as we go. But I thought that was, I kind of had to get clarification from her earlier on, like what exactly is a grant, what is, from our perspective, a grant, sponsorship and in-kind, and then going to capital, then kind of operating, and then no money, exchanging hands are kind of the 30 kind of buckets that they'll fall into. And we also talked about the level of threshold of what needs to come to council. Like, if somebody's looking for, a team needs to go away and they want $200, are we going to need to bring that to council to approve? Should we set a threshold of, Toby and I thought maybe $1,000, anything over will come to council, anything less will be up to department heads to decide. We even talked about that maybe where it's not usually a department specific grant, that we could even at department head meetings take a vote, and if we're all in favor, then we do it, and that's kind of how we know that we're all in line. So that was kind of the dollar amount for us. And then also with the in-kind stuff where there's no money exchanging hands, it is hard also for accounting purposes to start kind of booking internal revenues and things. Like, I don't know if we want to get into that, but we could keep it tracked separately, and we could still be reporting it either on a, whatever is wanted by council, as monthly, or quarterly, or semi-annual basis of what exactly we have in when we quantify. It could be even Toby's time or Kelly's time, or somebody's time that they're taking to do it, or Greg's team does a lot of things, setting things up and taking things down. That again is taking them away from doing things that they would be doing for the municipality. So we can kind of quantify that, put it in a report, and be presenting it to council, or even I guess finance. We also talked that maybe it goes to finance committee first as the first kind of talks, kind of nail things down, and then once finance committee approves or kind of thinks it's a good idea and chooses to take it to council as a recommendation to actually cut the check, basically.
And another thing we talked about is like, this wasn't, in the past few years, it's been almost every other council meeting that for sponsorship, but with this is a process that is done before we do our budget. So if you want sponsorship on behalf of Woodstock, then you have to fill out the appropriate paperwork, and then you go through it as whatever finance committee or whatever, and then we decide so that we can have them budget amount. Now, in the past, we've always budgeted a little bit more for a few things that we've come along the way that you don't know about at budget time. But it would be, so it wasn't something that was continuous, like organizations would have to be organized. I guess, does anybody have any questions?
Now, I guess just in looking at and clarifying the two time frames, is this correct? October 32nd or 31st for events, January 1st to June 30th, and then the other. So anybody that's listening, and we've had a lot of sponsorship submissions in the last week or two because this is the time of year. So, and then the other for April 30th for events, July 1st to December 31st. So at least people kind of get a sense that there's two blocks throughout the year. So an event that's in the summer doesn't necessarily have to get submitted the full year before. So am I hearing ultimately, I guess this is still a work in progress?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look for feedback and then we can,
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. That's what my assumption was. So I think I suggest all council really go through this with a fine tooth comb again, and I will as well, and just make sure. I know as previous council, for me anyway, this is a good step to get this process a little clearer. So I'm happy we're at least this far with it, and I think it's good.
And we kind of like to have something out by March 31st that doable, so that organizations can start planning. I know that a lot of organizations don't necessarily rely on the small funding they get from us, but some of their packages, like they want to get it out there, but they're sponsored by Woodstock and have their logo and all that sort of thing. So we talked that maybe March 31st, if that works for
Okay.
everybody.
Good goal.
Can I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
Just wondering, as somebody who's used this application, is there a plan to either simplify it and or put it online?
Yes. Everything that we're doing, we want to put it online, so there's a building form also, so anyone that has not very many printers anymore, like a tablet or phone that is compatible with it. And then anything that we need, they can take a picture of it, or they want to print it off and bring it in, but it's
Anyone else have any other questions for Toby or Kristen on this? All good? You good? Okay, perfect. Thank you. So do you want to hang there to talk about? Don't go anywhere. So tourism is up next, so we'll let you continue.
we have Woodstock Rotor Act that's here this evening. attended one of their meetings last month about the community garden and that the project that they're looking at. So I asked them to come and do a small presentation to council so that they're aware of what they're working towards. And it's a great project. And I think you'll love it. Thanks.
Welcome. Happy to have you here. Just for clarity, if you don't mind introducing yourselves, that would be awesome.
Absolutely. So, your worship, Mayor Jones, and respected council members, my name is Rochelle Smith, and I am the current director of public image for the Red Rock Club of Woodstock. And Phil and Bork are one of our co-presidents for the Red Rock Club. So, thank you so much for having us here this evening. We're really excited to be able to share one of our projects with you guys. So yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about the Carleton County Community Garden that we're working towards starting. Well, I'm not sure who's controlling that.
Here we go.
So for those of you who don't really know a lot about our club, we're affiliated with the Woodstock Rotary Club. So we're 18 to 30-year-old young professionals in the community. We are members of Rotary International as well, which is a younger demographic. So we support all the same causes that Rotary Club supports, so promoting peace, fighting disease, clean water, all of that stuff. And this project would fall into our growing local economy. We did also present to folks and make the past council on the Free Little Library project, so you guys might remember us from that as well. So our goal with this project is to fight hunger and poverty in Carleton County, further education and knowledge on food security and sustainability in the community, as well as increase and foster community connections. We're hoping this will be a gathering place for folks to be able to come, share knowledge, as well as learn how to produce their own food and be more independent. So this is a little schematic of our ideal community garden, and we understand that this probably won't be feasible in our first year when we create it, but we're hoping, like I said, that it will be a gathering place for folks to come, interact, garden, and so to have all of this, we'd like to have shade structures that people can relax on picnic tables and have a lunch, have children's play areas set up, so if parents want to bring their kids, they can interact and entertain themselves while their parents are gardening. Ideally, we'll have a storage shed on site, so they can keep tools and things right at the garden, and so just kind of create a comfortable environment. We did put a survey via our Facebook page and talked to community members on what was most important to them, and a lot of them said that wheelchair access was really important, as well as having a combination of traditional garden beds and raised garden beds. So ideally, we'd like to have paved pathways with the table gardens so they can wheelchairs are able to use. And yeah, so ideally, we'd like to have a combination garden. So our first step in this project was to have our meeting that Toby attended. And we had multiple other partners from the community come and talk to us about how they could be involved. So some of those folks included NBC Carpentry. They agreed to help us build our raised garden beds, the Elkistor Public Library, and the seed bank that we're going to be using, as well as Ben Cummings. The Western Valley Regional Service Commission, Wendy Marr, came and spoke to us about grant funding. Community Metal is open to helping us build a storage shed. Ability NB is going to help us figure out wheelchair accessibility. The Rotary Club, of course, is going to support us in this endeavor. Kent would like to help donate some lumber. And then a number of individuals in the community who have reached out via our survey saying they would like to be involved. So that's who we currently have on board, and then we know there's more to come. So on the next slide, we talk a little bit about who we'd like to have as potential partnerships. So we're hoping to get some concrete pathway, maybe Cooks of Peanuts to help us out with that. Eastern Fence, I've reached out to them, and then waiting to hear back about some sort of security fence to put around the garden. Local farmers and contractors, there's tons in our area, so we're hoping we can get some topsoil mulch for compost. Like the outdoor living solutions is a Rotarian, of course, so we're hoping maybe we'll do some landscaping around the garden to make it look beautiful. Yeah, yeah, and Maritime Lumber might be interested in helping us with some lumber donations as well. But of course, we're always looking for partnerships, so if you folks know anyone who would be interested in helping us out, we'd love that feedback as well. And another part of our project is to help folks have the skills to sustain and maintain their healthy living. So we'd like to offer free education sessions. These would be hosted by our club, but we wouldn't be the ones giving those presentations. We would reach out to expert guest speakers, like the folks at Woodstock Farm Market, to share their expertise on gardening skills, preservation skills, and cooking skills, and recipes. We have talked to the MBCC library, and they are open to having us give those presentations in their area, as well as Valley Food Bank and other community partners. So I guess next steps for this project would be to finalize goals. So we're gonna put out membership forms, and hopefully folks will fill it out and send them back, and then we'll know just how many garden beds we need set up in the first year. So once we have that figured out, we can finalize fees for folks who want to be members, and then we can decide on how many and what size garden beds we need. And then another big step is to finalize the location. So we have a tentative private location right now, but we did want to speak to you folks as well if there's town property that would be available. And moving forward, if this garden fills up, we might want to start another one. So if there's this extra green space that you guys know of. And then of course, we need to continue to develop those community partnerships and lots of grant funding once we have it finalized. So that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to add? We're just super excited to do this project, and I think it's going to be great for our community, and also be helping with food bank as well. I'm sure that we have run our community garden to different greenhouses, so eventually we want to do a bigger partnership. And they do have their new kitchen as well that we can do some cooking classes in, so they're going to be a really good partner for us. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you first for the presentation. I know many of us here are super excited about this, and I know from my standpoint, other community members have reached out in the last year and lately about doing something similar, the same thing. And so I'm excited to see how much effort you've already put into this. So it feels like we're kind of ready to almost roll. So I don't know, I guess, before I ask Andrew this question, do any councillor members have questions for us?
Just how long before you think we'll know how big an area to be?
Well, yeah, we'd really like to start our gardening this spring. I know that's not very far away. So we're going to bring cards, in the next couple of months. We have a Rotaract club meeting this week on Thursday, and we're going to form a smaller committee to kind of tackle this project head on at that meeting. So we should know probably in the next month or so.
Hopefully you'll come back to us as soon as you have the square footage or whatever you've been looking to get.
Mhm.
It's not small enough to include in the
Yeah.
You know, if it was warm,
Yeah.
really find a big skyscraper for them. You know, really nice little- really nice
It's
thing.
easy to keep an eye on.
Yeah.
That's a big part.
Yeah, security. Go ahead, Councillor Williams.
When you were talking about, I know it's a private location, but is it on the side of the Woodstock or the other side?
I think that's a fair. It's the Broadway School of Canton. So
That's the one I was hoping was
That's
gonna be.
I was thinking that same thing.
I was like, have you still been control? Yeah,
we
well,
have
that's it.
protected some protection with them, so.
Well, and a few of us had spoken back before the election and said, if we get in, this is something we should take on right away, and we should talk to Joel, so it's wonderful, you guys are doing this.
It's wonderful, you're doing it for us.
Yeah, so ideally, we haven't really gotten that far in our planning, but we're thinking there would be a small fee. We want it to be really accessible to everyone in the community, so if that does hold folks back, we kind of want to make sure that that's not a barrier. We had a presentation from the New Brunswick Community Harvest Gardens out of Fredericton, and they do like a pay as what you can situation, so we might do something like that with a base fee, and I think the other prices were $30 to $40
Mhm.
for years, which is
Mhm.
what kind of fee depending on who it is for the partner you're going to put up in the description. And so we just want to make sure that we get standard costs and that's going to be that.
On the private lots, I was thinking of, didn't get highlighted. Is there a water source there?
I don't know if there is, but we did talk to Alan Hellman and Keith Hellman, and they have an existing community garden, and they talked about rain barrels,
Yeah.
and having a reservoir, and I think they said the fire department built that one one time. I don't know if that's accurate, but, so something like that might be, might be an
Maybe get
option
in.
too, if we could
Yeah,
have.
okay. I wondered if there was a consideration on water source on that property or what the what your thought was in having water there. Um,
It's like ivy totes as well, and all those up and refills that we have options in their house.
Okay. So I guess my thought would be, Andrew, I guess I don't know whether we want to just kind of make a recommendation to review possible locations that we would have, but whether there's something that would compare or be in a better situation than the private land, but
Yeah, we have a database of the lands
Yeah.
that we own, so we can look through that and see if there's something that would, complement this one, or,
so while you're doing your math, we'll do a little homework on this in the meantime, but, I think everybody here is in support of you for sure. It's a great project and it's definitely needed, and most communities have a garden or 3 or 4 now, right? So that's great. Thank you very much. Does anybody else have any more questions before we move on?
I just had a
Yeah.
question for you. Would we have to, or actually maybe this is for a CAO, but would we have to rezone it if they did get that spot? Is there any kind of zoning issue? Not an issue if we're all
Part
in
of the
support of it,
homework?
but you know what I mean?
yeah, part of the whole.
Part of the
Yeah.
homework. If it's private land, it's
Probably,
different.
yeah, I mean, because you're allowed to have a garden.
Yeah.
On your property.
Okay.
I don't even know what it is off the top of my head, what it's zoned. I don't think it's institutional anymore, I assume that has changed, yeah. So
Yeah.
there probably would be a lot of zoning restrictions for this.
So just one other question that we have expanded hugely. Were you thinking to start there small, just continue more forward in the existing town, or were you thinking of like a community fair set up in North Five and Grafton, and another one up in Jackson Town, and something like expanding into those areas too, because they are have their own community, but we're all part of our own big community now.
We haven't thought that far ahead yet, but we did talk about our last meeting that if this is successful and the garden fills up really quickly, we might need to start another garden, and having compost, so we would be open to doing that as well.
Yeah, I think you'll find it'll be very popular. I know in the city of Fredericton, for example, I've spoken with the lady, you guys have your presentation. But they have at least 5, I think now, and they have wait lists. So it's, if this is successful, it's at least a model, and I'm sure there's others that will want to take it on. Each garden there is not operated by the same individual even, so maybe it'll encourage other people and, other wards to take on the same thing, so, but, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So you're back up, Toby?
Thank you very much. So just a couple updates on the tourism side. The events committee that I spoke about last month, I'm a member of. We meet quarterly with different organizations, and our purpose of these meetings are to network and discuss some training that is being put on by the Gross and Morse Institute, GMIS, which is all free. They talk about sponsorship, they talk about volunteers and that sort of thing, so I kind of make sure that they have that information. Our main goal is to create a year-round calendar of all the events that happen within Woodstock. And actually today, you probably received an email from me. We're all about shared calendars now. So it's an events calendar that you can pull up on your iPad. I'm not sure if it syncs to your phone or not, but it'll any event that I know of will go into that calendar. If there's a poster or anything like that, will go into it. I also share that with the department heads and also some of the members on this committee who have access to an Outlook program. Gmail works okay, but it sometimes can be wonky. And basically, just so that if anyone ever asks, know what's happening in our community. And if there's something on there that I don't have, please feel free to send me the information and I'll add it. It's a lot easier for me to add things that I have than to spend time to go and report through social media. At one time, I used to scan the Google to see what was happening. So it's a great tool. It's also on our website under events, so anything that's there, so the community can go there as well and see what's happening. So our next meeting for that is on April 4th, and we'll be discussing spring activities and anything to help planning the summer events.
If there was somebody that wanted to bring the event to town or something to do something, would there be a pass, maybe on your page or something like that? Like you could say like, push here and get in touch with me and you can start having some conversations with these folks?
The next thing is the McCain Community Theater. We have the meeting on the 23rd of January. This has been an inactive committee for a few years, basically because the theater is operational under the Department of Education Code of Protocol. So it has been getting quite a lot of traffic lately. So our first action item is to generate a list, myself and another committee member, and those names will be brought to council to form this new committee. And so we can start talking about, because we have a agreement with the Anglophone West. So we talk about an event, hostess, lights and sound, who, there's someone that's looking to do a fundraiser, how do we go about that with the cost and that sort of thing. So basically, these are just committee meeting minutes that I just wanted to give you an update on that, and then we get lists generated, which I hope will be within the next month. I'll come back to you with that. Does anyone have any questions on
Could you maybe just clarify for council, because we have a lot of new councilors here now, that's all right. Just that, I guess, maybe speak to, and Andrew, you maybe will do that as well, or CAO, that the committee is what is supposed to oversee the theater and.
So basically, it's, I don't have that agreement with me, sorry. But it's supposed to oversee like the, one, it's supposed to set the rental rate for it. It oversees, like the school looks after the custodials. So, or sorry, the school district looks after the custodials, so I hope them through that system. We also have a budget line where we look after, last year we bought some new equipment, we bought some new microphone cords and microphones.
For the staffing too, right? For the
Sorry?
staffing.
It's staffing, so that's something that we are gonna be working towards, and figuring that budget portion out. Because I don't think we have enough for a full-time position at this time. But it could be something that we could combine. That will be a huge budget.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I guess this is your big hint, that it's really a volunteer committee that oversees the operations of it. And I think that has been identified maybe as a struggle in our community for who's responsible for it, and is it, sustainable and realistic that a volunteer committee is going to oversee this all summer long and be there to open and close. And so I think that has been identified as an issue, and I think this is your hint that you can probably expect maybe a request or recommendation for something different or some level of employment in the near future.
And if there is someone that is interested in sitting on this committee, looking forward to
We got a question from.
I don't have a question, I just have a comment. Jolene and I have been working on this collectively for many years. I think we need to speak to the virtual presence of our theater. I work with people, they don't know what it looks like, they don't know the seating capacity, the ticketing. I think we need to be more available, and for people who are on their way through, we fill 400 seats. a nice little stop in our community, one for our community and two for promoters. Right now, the vision would be to have virtual presence, so you can actually go through the theater, have an itemized list of the information that's there, what we have to offer, potentially selling tickets. So it's one, getting people in to spend money in our community and enjoying the assets that we have. And it becomes a lot easier to do that. So I just want to share that because I think it's important when we talk about what's the community theater look like. Often people have never been inside of it. And so how can we create that visual experience by not on a drive-through? How do we get the George Canyons and the small acts on the way through to the greater benefit of the community?
Good feedback and good points, and I think that blends well with all the conversations that were had as to if we want this theater to be successful, we're going to have to add a level of commitment ourselves from the town to provide resources to do things like what Kelly just provided as an example. Right now, it's, again, I think very unrealistic to think a volunteer committee is going to do all of that for us. So if it's our investment and we want it to be successful, it's time to step up and do things, because I do think there are a lot of people locally that want to try and do things and bring acts in, and there's lots of interest from the outside. So thank you. And monthly report. You still have one.
Sorry. In your package is just a monthly report that just some of the things that have been going on in January. With some of the events, and then also some of the things that the community assets, some of the new things they're working on for this year, and then some of the committees that I attended meetings to. But I just kind of wanted to point out their communication piece, the stats. Those are, so if you don't already, you can download the Town of Woodstock app onto your phone. And at the present time, we have 1388 Apple users and 966 Android users. And so that's basically any push notification goes out and goes right to your phone. The next is the emails, the people who have signed up for emails, text messages, and voice call. Voice call, that 154, that's what people who just receive voice calls, which we do not do very often unless of an emergency. Just because people think it's a spam or that sort of thing. I think we've only done it twice. One was an Amber Alert and one was the water. And then the social media platform for Woodstock tourism events, our Facebook followers and our Instagram followers. Facebook and Instagram is becoming it's a great tool, but we post something, unless you have the right followers, people don't see it. So it's kind of a workaround for progress, always trying to, like, more people like the page and see your information, and sometimes it's the comments that seem to jump up. Then the last thing is the other things that have been done in January. Any questions on the report?
Well, this coming summer and stuff like that, see, there's some events and stuff going on, or?
Right now, I do not, but I know that there's a lot of organizations working on their planning stages. Some organizations are worried about, of course, the increased funding, and if there's enough money to go for I know I've had this conversation with a couple of different organizations that are concerned about, so they're trying to apply for some more funding through the federal and state government. You know, Atlantic or anything like that, just their mission costs. And to keep people from the stuff here.
This is actually with the meeting theater, but just for people's awareness, I think from what I understand, the need is not just for a manager, but also at least a part-time salon person. Is that right? Because it could be quite difficult if we all know who the one person is in town who does it regularly, and if he's booked.
If we could find that
Magical.
That's right, somebody who can magically be great.
that would be the ultimate.
Mhm.
There are a few different people that are running the soundboard. They're getting some training from Theater New Brunswick to do high school drama, but there's also another gentleman who is interested in helping with that, so he
I mean, I know the stuff Kelly was talking about, a lot of them would bring their own sound people, but you would still need somebody supervising it and showing them what to do and.
Well, and also to make sure that they don't put things into the system that is wrong or that they take them out.
Yeah, I will say as part of the agreement that we have with the district, there is supposed to be a level of training always at the high school. It's kind of baked right in the agreement that there's supposed to be 2 to 3 students trained and always available, that at least they're learning. And I know there'll probably be some suggestions as to how we handle encouraging a few students to maybe want to do that and get trained, and maybe that may mean paying them a few hours if they're going to offer their time to help with an event. So, yeah, that will help too. If we can't afford to kind of hire both, or can't find someone that can do both. Are you done? Thank you. So moving on to number 4, protective services. Yeah. Chief Forward, you're up.
Well, good evening, Mayor and Council. So I want to recognize that you received a rather large report, our annual report. For anyone that may not be familiar with the annual report, it serves a couple of key objectives. Number one, we set out in early, first quarter of the year to begin establishing our strategic objectives for the coming year. So if we say we're going to start working towards something, if we say we're going to basically achieve certain objectives, then we need to report to Mayor and Council on just exactly how successful we were in that regard, or if we failed in that regard. So the plan is as transparent as we can make it. It highlights some of the outcomes. It doesn't necessarily draw conclusions, but that doesn't mean that we're not prepared to offer our views on why certain things forward in the way that we do. So primarily, we want Mayor and Council to see accountability. And I think primarily with this report, our strategic plan objectives were 183 that we looked after for 2022, and we achieved a 90% objective completion on it. So that is a step in the right direction. I think at minimum, we have been able to display quite openly. We put this on our website, and we showed it in the week with nothing held back. I mean, obviously, we can't get into specific for operations, but I think when we lay out 183 objectives for those in the community that choose to go through it, this is the report card. This is us showing you how we did. I think fairly we came in at a 20% completion. Mayor and Council may ask me to look for another job, but I think in 2022 it was a step in the right direction. The other thing too is we don't want to miss important issues from a public safety perspective. There are everything ranging from equipment to intelligence objectives to obviously administration to even our wellness and how we certainly look to make sure that achieving those objectives is going to grow and progress our police force. The other thing that the report provides is statistical data. Again, in reading the report, certainly when I call up statistical data and I see the spikes in just about every area of crime, I see Councillor Brown nodding his head. This is a certain concern. And again, we have our views on why that's taken place, and I certainly welcome any questions and do my best to answer accordingly. The other thing is that we want to report on the temperature of the police force, how our members are doing. We take the wellness of the members. Like many professions, policing can be a stressful endeavor. But we're proud to report that in the last 3.5 years, we've had no issues related to this leave. We put the members first and foremost. There is ongoing daily discussion about issues that arise, and we want to make sure that those communication lines of support are first and foremost. So the report basically captures as much of this as we possibly can, and I use the term report card, but it really is our way of me to say, here's what we did in 2022, here's some of the experiences that we saw, and we laid it out for everybody to draw perhaps their own conclusions, but hopefully to ask a few questions about the insight that the community will provide. So before I get to the recommendation, are there any questions, any specifics about the report stuff?
It's very well done. There's a lot of great,
Listen,
very good, so thank
if
you.
you're looking to make statements, we'll accept those. Those as well. So, there was a very collaborative affair. You should know that no one person in the organization leads our strategic planning. At the beginning of every year, the entire organization gets together. They are the ones that are boots on the ground. They are the ones that are seeing from their experiencing. They are the ones talking to the community. Obviously, through discussions with mayor and council, the chief of police has input. But I'd say by and large, you're seeing objectives that are submitted and looking to be completed by the officers and staff themselves. I think when you trust in your people to be able to put together what is your plan, it makes my job easier. And I've learned through a number of mistakes that when you have that trust in place, invariably people will not only make the right decisions, but get learned more in the last 3.5 years from the men and women of the police force that I have been pleasantly surprised as to what we've been able to get achieved, and that's credit to those officers and staff. There is one clarification as it relates to, and I'll find the page here. I shared this with our good friend Jim Dunville. It's page 19 in the area of accountability and building public trust. The transparency piece. We are going to be uploading our 2023 strategic plan. The process has been completed. I'll wait for the way to move to the page. So this page in particular, I just want to clarify for Jim's sake and as well as no one else, because we don't want to give inaccurate information. The strategic plan 2023 should be online sometime in March, following approval of the submission by the end. So I will update that before we upload this particular thing report online. I don't think that'll change. Other than that, we've reviewed it as a group and we stand firm on the information that's in it.
There's some big increases. Property crimes, what should we tell our residents? Can they do anything at all, or?
So I think with the increases, and typically when you see increases across the board, you go to what the data is, and that people are feeling more comfortable in reporting the data. That has traditionally been a great challenge in that regard. But I'm not going to sit here and say that the increases are because people are reporting crime would stay fairly. We are dealing with the results of what recently may be linked to cost of living increases. But we also have, and it's not unique to Woodstock, but pervasive throughout the province is addiction to opioids. And we're certainly seeing our fair share of that in Woodstock, to the point where we have responded to the creation of an integrated enforcement unit that is robustly populated with officers working on those issues on a daily basis. Some of the arrests that have taken place in the last few months are specific individuals that the Woodstock Police Force and their partners have identified as serious. And to have those those individuals off the street or using them in custody is a necessary step forward to securing a public safety Woodstock. So I think those combinations, council, cost of living, immigration services, if you look at the area of parking violence, this is something that since my arrival has really concerned me. So much so that in 2022, the Woodstock Police Force spearheaded and facilitated a stakeholders symposium where we had everybody from the municipality branch to the Department of Social Services come to attend with the expressed intent to determine how better we communicate and build efforts toward victims of partner violence to not only report but to receive assistance. Problematic is that in some instances, victims of this particular crime don't necessarily feel comfortable or safe reporting the incident. And my sense is that this will continue to be a battle as it relates to partner violence. But we're also looking to host another symposium coming up on March the 16th that will bring the stakeholders together. So we have to put some due diligence with this, and it's in the strategic plan for 2023. And I'm very happy to say that we'll try to get this done in March and set for March the 16th.
As far as your auxiliary, how many auxiliary do you have?
We have 4 auxiliary officers, and when you look at the augmentation of our platoons, especially on nights at Halloween nights, for example, we had our auxiliary officers coming out, and we were able to have full stay on all hands on deck, where we had the majority of the police force coming out, walking, looking, probably 4 or 5 different areas at once when we would shift and move. But we've done that the last 3.5 years, and the village is a big part of that. The village is a big part of special events. We'd like to see utilities get more involved, but you have to understand that these folks have many professions, not only volunteer firefighters, and we have to get them in. So it's a program that I think works well. We're very happy with our utilities. I think we can feel that there's an opportunity to add to that list and even further good things to the police force. I'd like to see that.
I have a question, I guess, quickly. With the increase in spikes in crime, do you feel as though you have adequate staffing at this time to do patrols and cover the things that your folks need to be covering? Like, or do you feel as though you're positioned well to continue to clamp down, so to speak, on some of this stuff?
Yeah, I think, I feel that we're in a much better position now than we were a few years ago. I've never, and I believe a lot of the chiefs would say this, the answer isn't always added resources to, the issue. It's the intelligence led, which our partnerships inside, I think, with town of Woodstock we were able to have a session where I could tell you what MOUs we have in place and just what we're connecting into intelligence databases. I think you folks would be comfortable exactly what we're continuing to. We are invested partners in what's called an integrated target selection process, which sees all of the integrated enforcement units talk on a weekly basis to see what basically was moving in the province. Keep in mind that the rating is not produced in the province of New Brunswick, and for that matter, although that may be produced in small quantities, it's predominantly coming from the parts of Canada, say that Ontario, that probably not areas of production. So we need to work not just within our own territorial jurisdiction, we need to partner with others production, but the distribution, the pathways of that product into our problem. So obviously, partners such as the Rural Services Agency, agencies, police forces, military police, these are calls and conversations that are being handled on a daily basis. To answer your question specifically, when we put together our strategic plan, I think that for 2023, we will see variations. Mayor and council will already approved as of last fall some additions to that organization. But I think we're probably going to make some slight changes again, but folks will see as part of the strategic plan and then going to increase that, increasing standards. So again, we don't hide. Nothing is hidden. Folks see everything, and I'd rather get in trouble for telling the truth than get in trouble for misleading. So I think you'll see that with what we put for organizational plan 2023, Councilor, I'm satisfied that we'll have will that change as the demands on police and services change. That I expect will most likely be a discussion among folks, and when called upon, we will most likely address the office from your consideration that I would include police.
Thank you, Chief Wood.
I'd like to more or less make a statement, you can comment on it if you want, I don't want to phrase any questions, there's no not the position. This is just my views, my thoughts, where we're seeing such a spike in crime. I don't really think it's the fact that the police aren't doing their job, I think it's the fact that the judicial system is lacking in providing deterrence after the police have done their job. And I'm wondering if there's anything we can do at the grassroots municipal level to start to talk the conversation of somehow making the punishment fit the crime again. That's something that we're interested in doing as mayor and council, but you only supposed to be judged by your peers or further peers. I think we need to start that conversation and start putting the punishment back on. Because I just honestly, it's my opinion that there's no deterrent. They don't, people that are doing the small crimes against property crimes, they really have no deterrent. If they get stopped by the police, they go, they get first slapped and then back out doing the next one. Nothing against what you guys are doing your jobs. I don't want to put you in an awkward position. That's just what I see.
It's not an awkward position. I think fairly and to from those conversations we have actually quite robustly community association chiefs of police, for example, right now it's a position for those in other entities, Main Street from what we've seen. I know first information through the association chiefs of police that you have Bill C-75 that community starts on a daily basis, which speaks to basically the judiciary opinion as it relates to police. Council can continue to add to that further conversation. I am confident that every entity is acting working always towards seeing what amendments can be put in place for changes. There was going to be a discussion at the February conference, which we have 22nd, 23rd, 24th for chiefs. That's going to be on the agenda. You're going to have all the discussions about amendments that goes forward to the Controlled Drugs and Substances Act. We're in some possession and how best to look at that perhaps. So those discussions are ongoing, and of course those amendments and C4 law are in place. So we have so many committees through the NBCP, but Justice Efficiencies Committee, sees members, chiefs on the BCP. they're sitting with chief justices, they're sitting with Crown, and I can tell you right now that the Crown is also looking at standardization through files, both are tackling files. They're also around, cross-method of having two different sources that ultimately gets spent on files and make additional consideration as to who exposed to people. But I really am, and I would say it with every issue if I saw it differently, but from my perspective, since 2007, I have never seen more cooperation, more discussion, learning more issues than today. We also have meetings with the deputy minister of public safety, and we sit through enforcement governance conferences with the premier. Usually it's 2 times a month, bringing them up to speed on exactly what these forces are focused and prioritized on. So we have some early problem. Always we'll certainly have issues 5 years from now. I think right now we're going to see changes in all of the partners have demonstrated that really that they continue to do. So if we do have some new expertise, there is either a case law supporting that release, there is a bill that's supporting that release. But I'm also comfortable that partners are working together to work in the confines that allows or doesn't allow that release. And the CIC and BCP is going to have to make sure that the lawmakers are looking for whatever amendments or major changes that serve to adversely impact the public city communities. So right now, I think it's heading in the direction. And I think
Can I speak to that too? Just, that's not what you wanted to hear?
is there a follow-up?
No,
I will say.
It's not perfect, but
Yeah.
They're heading in a direction. I certainly can easily say that I'm happy with it. There's been plenty of times when I haven't been happy about certain things, and but I think that's where we're at. We're starting to see some changes, and what more can Woodstock police force do to respond to crime? I think we have what we need to do that effectively. But you're right, it's going to take everybody to go in the same direction, not just the police forces, but it's going to take the judiciary, it's going to take the ground, it's going to take our partners, and it's going to take the community. If you live and work and play in the town of Woodstock, you have a responsibility. Setting some of the crimes we're not very good at being want to take that call us. If you do call us, it's our responsibility to make sure that we
I will add from, our standpoint from council and mayor, we do have a new level at the regional level now where there is a new public safety committee formed that representatives from police, fire will all sit on that from the entire region. That group will also get FaceTime with the minister, and I, the one on the board of the Regional Service Commission, that one of two that mayors that will sit on that committee. So as far as advocating for ourselves and us agreeing to put letters together or whatever it is we want to do so that we can support certain bills and stand behind some changes that we see are coming through, then we can certainly do that. And we have the ability now, at least with the regional level, we've got our own public safety committee up and going, and there's lots of things that we can try and do there to communicate how we feel and where we stand. So I think if that's kind of where you're going, what are we going to do? That's certainly what we should do from our role, and our part in it is to advocate, and the more people that advocate, the better. So, And I would agree with Chief Ford in when you're listening to all of the other layers of government talk right now about policing, they're talking about it more now than they've ever talked about it in history. And there's lots of, I think, desire on all levels to do better and to put supports and to be supporting every level of operation, whether it's RCMP or town police or city police. So I'm in total agreement if council agrees that we want to draft a letter, draft multiple letters, send them to multiple people. Let's do it. That's fine. The more people that are advocating and voicing concerns, the better. And for our region, we're really the only one that operates a police force ourselves today. So they're going to listen to what we have to say. And when I look at the results of your report, and when I see spikes, I always default back to what's the trend. And I'd like the 6-year statistical comparison because it kind of really only highlights one major issue, and it's property crime. So to me, I see property crime as the biggest kind of standout as far as it's very different than its 6-year statistical. So I'm quite certain if we went across the province, and maybe Chief Ford, you have some knowledge on that, but I hear that that's an issue everywhere. So we're not the only ones that are seeing spikes in that area, but that's the one, when I look at the 6-year statistical report, it's the one that stands out.
It's true, and back to the mayor, I think that is why the province has really started to step up discussions on this. I think they started to see the influx of that use across the province. In comparison to the rest of the country, Brunswick is this way, and that's a concern for everybody. So, again, it's not just unique to Woodstock, it's through the province. And it was about this time last year where we had, where we had GMP shut off and the question was asked, what more can government want to do to start those retention bills? The span of 3 months from there, and this is all news. I don't want to bring up the province contributed $2 million to these forces under CIC to create these integrated enforcement. So I want to stress it was an augmentation of the already in place. We were in that position, police officer, also had a position more importantly, the advantages and partnerships. So we now have inspection enforcement department, which is JPS, Justice and Public Safety Officer. That's embedded right here all the next 2 months we're going to see our CP embedded. So everybody is working very well together, and the government, which has not, I think, been to the level that they are involved now to the level where they're basically walking the walk. And almost to the point where their interest is so they are involved to the level that I would say is healthy. At the time we have to say, okay, listen, so they are doing what they can. And what I also love about this happening, and I want to be careful how I put this, there are discussions about what needs to that final prong. So you've got your education, you've got your enforcement, but where's the support from the health and addiction services type of thing, where there are people that are looking to say, listen, I'm an addict, I don't want to be involved in recidivism, I want to get back my life. Where is the government or the stakeholder support that gets assistance? At the February conference in the ECP, we have Dr. Jeff Nance that's going to be presenting options on how that will happen, and we have the Minister of Public Safety, Government, showing up to specifically hear Dr. Nance's presentation. So I am things, I'm very much looking forward to see what potential partnerships might come out of this. Could there be infrastructure, medical health professionals that are dedicated to a location where, clients can come, they can get the help, and we would be worth it for just one citizen. We start raising and saying, "Nelson, help," and we can integrate that and get back in society, where they're not, because, that candidate get the next. So, these are some of the conversations. In fairness, I think we do a good job of communicating all of the things that are taking place. And this is really happening in the last 12 months. I'd say 13 months ago, probably were setbacks that were, it's the first thing. So fairly, this has happened fairly recently. And what do I hope comes out of it? Unbelievable success has nothing to do with company. It has to do with everything but the details of what will be in the outcome. So that's it. If I see people trying, that is our path forward. And I think that we're seeing will come to fruition. I'll be back here. I say it on here. That's it. I'll tell you the first time. But right now, I'm feeling very optimistic.
Anyone else? Albert, did you still have your recommendation to
I do.
present?
So, recommendation and separate public consideration of how to do the strategic plan section. That is the, so I'll do that recommendation.
Okay, thank
Great
you.
insight, thank you.
Fire reports. Yeah. We have the fire report next. Chief McCong.
My thought you the other time.
You were hoping.
I'll be brief. Our 2022 year in review, we had 323 fire page calls, up from the previous year from 275. During the year, there was changes in our FERS reporting system, and we're now able to do administration really volunteer work, fundraising, training, and maintenance, which will be into the system. That came into effect a little after the first quarter of last year. Total everything, we got 455. It's up considerably. 5 years. I won't go down through, read all of them. I'll leave that to you both. Just an update, our pumper should be being underway tested tomorrow for the next day. Hopefully, we will be seeing, getting a call to come up and do the final walk around and have a look at it. We may be here with something and if you're wondering why there's crazy in the river this weekend, the Woodstock article.
Right.
That we recertified for us, our ice rescue, and all the trainers, members of the ice rescue. You see the trailer out, force, kids involved in the river. Any questions?
I don't, how many are doing the training this weekend out of curiosity?
I know I've got 4 or 5 new members that don't have the training. And the break off, I would say we're going to have 16.
Oh, wow. Wow.
We have changed, we got 4 or 5 gas-rated suits, so we will have our other suits out, but just not up.
No, that way your guys can have
I spray orange on it, so somebody in a snowmobile sees open water, wants to try and go across it, and hit him in the head, and
Snowmobilers, when they see open water, they can see them across.
We've seen that before.
That's the
I think I sledded with you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, up next, recreation.
Good evening, happy New Year. My report, I'll just read down through, there's some items that have been on here for a while, so for the new people, you're lucky, for others, they're getting long in the tooth there. But Bobby Vale Outdoor Rink is still operational. Looking ahead at the forecast for Family Day, I'm not so sure with the plus
Yeah.
temperatures into this week. We're optimistic but realistic at the same time. The staff have done a great job in maintaining that this winter with the temperatures we've had. And a lot of people have been able to enjoy it, which is nice. Safety canopy, our quotes are in. We have not acted on the installation of that yet. I think I referred to pile jacks last time potentially. I have not got around to actually looking at pile jacks versus sonotubes for the base of that structure, which I want to look into before we proceed. So that is a work in progress. Energy upgrade, field house lighting, Al Diverson from Englobe was up to do his final testing to see that our lighting meets the tender document. I meet with Pierre Weber tomorrow to review that report, and we'll have that for submission to see if in fact our lighting levels in the tender document have been met. So that we're hoping, I'm very optimistic will be signed off on. System integration, I might have talked about this prior. That's where we take the physical component, being myself, out of scheduling heat and in the arena and in the room rentals. So that we're working with Delta to try to integrate with their ActiveNet for software that happens at the booking level. For example, arena heat is always a conversation. Maybe you guys don't know the history on arena heat. There's agreements set up with high schools and university groups at what level they get for practices and games. You know, we might want to review that going into the future. In the past, it was discussed about coin operation, and then giving access to heat for everyone at their leisure, whether town of Woodstock wants to subsidize whatever rate that was. At the day, that wasn't something that they wanted to proceed with. I've had conversations about the new council and maybe resubmitting that to have a look at with the provision of providing an equal opportunity to be warm in the arena at a cost share opportunity. My last quote on those operation units per zone, the cumulative was $18,000, and that was prior to COVID. So we know what that number could look like. Currently, our budget for propane is close to $11,000, I do believe, for that operation. So anyway, in the future, we may look at as a whole what we want to do to better service and provide an environment that better meets the needs of our community. The aquatic facility pool pump impeller, the pool pump that's been there since 1995, that's been deficient on a regular basis, has been repaired. We had to repair it because we're still waiting for the new pump. Quoted at $17,000 bill to arrive. So we did repair it and it costed for just over $3,000. We'll keep it operational until we get the new pump, and then decide at that point whether we hold it or whether we install it. The arena water treatment system has been installed and is in operation. The Little Skittle Club daycare that we operate for 15 participants that had water issues and we've been down since October, and they moved over to Studio 2 we've moved back over. Everything's finalized. We're waiting on the provincial inspector to do their final inspection. We've been ready for a few days, and we're getting the inspection done Thursday, hoping to reopen on Friday. Due to all the inspections, we've been down for 5 days of service. Upcoming events and recreational opportunities. We have the calendar which Toby, so I thought I would share that with you. What's going on, this one is predominantly around the facility, not the events and community at large, just give you a snapshot. of how we're keeping busy at the Air Motor Center within the Woodstock Recreation Department. Today we hosted just a few things that we have been up to. Today we hosted Middle Mason and 157 seniors for a senior social in our gallery room. There was a waiting list, but we couldn't fill it. Our next one is in March 22nd. Always very popular, accessible facility. Sometimes we provide food. Today it was tea, coffee, and just a few treats. We have a nice sliding party in partnership with the Woodstock Fire Department this weekend, hoping that we're not too icy. The conditions and maybe clear down to. They also hate you to slow you down. So anyway, it's been fun. Hopefully we get to maintain that opportunity for our community. The flower tender, I'm all over the place because there are a few notes after just to additions. The flower tender went out. Band Aids were the only bid on that tender. So we're looking forward to working with them again this year to provide our annuals for our beautification in landscape areas. Last weekend was a busy weekend. We hosted a pickleball tournament. We had a Woodstock High School hockey tournament. We had a swim and bee developmental camp and a few other things going on. So it was a great weekend, very cold, as we may know. The heat was well utilized, and it just took the chill off actually at those temperatures. So we had a potato and bee conference 2 days earlier, which was a huge success. The team totally managed on her end. So, any questions?
98% of the habitants of Carroll County are out here.
Sort of, yeah.
With COVID, should have walked up.
And please let me know if you have sent you along to Andrew, if you want things added to our report that you're interested in.
Yeah.
Some things we can get based on numbers and things we can't based on collecting the data that we currently have and limited to. If there's something that you have a question about, certainly pass it along to Andrew and I'll make sure I get it on.
It's a busy facility.
I just have a quick question, and maybe this is more of a public sort of question, I'm not sure. But I've had a number of parents, I spend a lot of time at the Air Motor Center, and the back parking lot in particular, this time of year, obviously with the ground getting softer, getting out potholes right now, that's pretty rough going through there. And I've had a lot of parents come to counselor saying, Counselor, well, bring that up at the next meeting, and I said, sure. So I just wondered if that's something that we would, you might look at in spring, or, I don't know, just, it's on your radar.
That's been on a radar for a very long time. It's just the cost to do the right thing for that area. We've been looking from the back to the front. We have a multi-million-dollar building with no curb inside, like no sidewalk, no curb to control water.
Right.
We don't have what we need up front as well as in the back is 100%. It's on our radar. We've quoted a few times, we've come up with solutions, and we just haven't been able to meet the numbers. Greg's team does a great job of coming in and grading and doing what we can do, but it's certainly, as you pointed out, a very temporary fix, often very slippery.
That's what did.
But the reality, without the proper control of water, without the media, without the things that we need to do to make that a more sustainable area. But yes, we have those numbers and we do have that. And we hear you.
Anyone else? Thank you, Kelly. Nope, you're good. Last but not least, Public Works. We'll shuffle the order next time.
Yeah. Mayor and Council. Last week, we found out again, we're having issues down the well house. Figured we better bring it to everybody council the first time this time. The number started to slide off toward the end of January. Not terribly bad, but within the last week or so, we've got a check valve or two. One or two have been gone, and I said the last one that keeps the water from coming back, the chlorine water from coming back into those, get into the village bacteria. So we ordered the parts in the middle of last week for the check valves, and they're supposed to be here by the end of the month. So hopefully by March, we're back down, we're gonna order more bacteria for it, so we get some fresh bacteria in the downtown. Last week, we were doing a backwash Thursday, and one of the valves for the air scour went on us too, so. Not only are we not water back, now the air scour system's not working either, so we're losing the air at the bottom of that. So there's maintenance that needs done, and me and Harold were in talks with Rory and a couple of his engineers last week. The control panels down there, probably the 1967 when that well was put in there, they're almost pretty much obsolete, so one of these times we're not gonna be able to charge for them, so they're looking at prices for VFDs to that. It's gonna be pricey, but needs done before we just get this one fixed and something else goes in. So, I mean, while the valves are right around the 15 range, we got to order it. I'm guessing the VFD, I haven't heard back from Jeff Burrow yet. He just gives a price, and Rory's looking into it too. I would say they're gonna be in the 60 to 75, somewhere in that area.
So less than $100 for all of it.
Yeah.
At 3 zeros.
Anyway, that's kind of an update on the well. I was hoping by the next week or two, we can hear people say they got manganese issues, so. It wasn't long coming from last week to this week, so.
Yeah.
Anyway. Just one of the reasons why everything is, I
You
believe.
said you hard to get your way in. How long did it install?
If we just had the one main one on, right where the meter is, the one right there, so we get that one in first thing, probably a couple hour fix, I'm guessing. If we had that one on, we keep it from going back into the two tanks. We keep that, that's keeping the chlorine in those two tanks. We just, like I say, I did chlorine test on those two tanks last week. And found that we have chlorine. Not great big numbers, but enough to fill that bacteria. Any other questions?
At least valve, something that you're sitting on a shelf, not being used to go bad, or the rubbers would just feel bad. So it's something that maybe down the road we can look at keeping an extra one to install.
And the system's 24 years old. Also, those old valves only get a lifetime of between 20 and 25 years. So, at least that one's sitting on itself.
The valves on the unit itself have been replaced. On the initial ones, from an air to an electric.
Right,
Those ones are about half that age.
half-life. Yeah.
I say it's probably about halfway through it.
Those blow valves, they don't break out the well.
Yeah.
Then they're in the kits.
I will say or add comment that similar to kind of when we had that spike before, we did notify the public, and I think probably knowing that we're a few weeks out, it would probably be warranted to do that again. So I think we've had at least one or two people comment or call in questions. So when we know it's going to be persistent for a few weeks, we're better off letting everybody know so they know what to expect.
First week, that's why I had it on CIC for tonight. We noticed the middle of last week that our numbers were getting too high. So hopefully by the end of the month, we will. Let's say if we can get the one valve back going, keeping it from the two tanks. That's not harm to the bacteria. Keep that in mind. That's another question. We're getting backup generators for Eastwood, one for.
So I know it breaks.
Backup generators for doing this with the other.
Pump is for senior.
Oh, well, it's still well.
Yeah.
But we need to look at some backup stuff for the lagoon. That's where our SCADA system is. Not near as big a generators down there. I think the generator that had quoted was around 14,000 for one. But that would just give us They won't run the aerators and stuff that are down there, but we don't need to, just during power outage anyway. But we do run our SCADA system off that. Right now, we're just running off those portable generators, but you get no light heat, no lights at all. And that's the way when we had here a while ago, it's kind of the effect all. If we lose it for more than 4 or 5 hours like we did that time, and we lose that for 2 or 3 days, we're looking at frozen pipes. So 14,000 to 15,000 would put a generator big enough to give us some heat and lights down there, so you can actually see what we're doing when you're hooking the generators up. And one for the shop over here in Grafton, we had to go to Murray's SO to get fuel, with that new fuel off system and run off the generator. So, and we supply fire department, police, engineer, motorcycle, fuel too, so. The one for that one, it's about 18,000, but it'll run the whole shop. So if we're out of power for a day or two, we can still do a mechanic work to pull the trucks in and service.
So that's installed into the systems that are automatically on.
Yeah. And the same as that SCADA down there, like, you wouldn't even have to, you wouldn't lose it. When that goes out, we don't know the tank levels or anything. And with all the other generators that we got going on, coming, it's gonna be a little bit help. So it's something that throw out there. Question. Yeah, me, Kristen can talk. Maybe a lot more, I'm afraid. The only other one I've got is we got to look at another truck in water facility. One we got for 2,000, well, we got two, but the one pulled all our pumps and stuff to the station, all that, and doesn't service work. This is 2006, and the transmission is going to start slipping. Weak body with not against a used truck, it needs to be a 1 ton. Something with the utility body on it. We've been looking in the Brunswick, there's not much in, but outside of the Brunswick, there is. You guys are interested in anything outside of the Brunswick or not? If you're looking at a new one, you're probably gonna be looking at 65 with the truck, and then the utility box, probably another 25. Get a good used one, probably. Yeah. Just about what we're looking at. And I don't want something you gotta go to the body that wants 6 months time, yes, but 17 to 22 should be a decent shape and things like that. Problem is, a lot of them are less. But may still pay that much. And maybe you go through a dealership and get 3 months on that, but just, that's my 3 things.
He's giving us a heads up for some of the big strategic capital discussions we're going to have.
Number 2, number 3, you're hitting 100,000. And that doesn't include number 1.
All good? Yeah.
All good.
Cheery as always. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I guess we'll adjourn this meeting. We're going to take a 5-minute recess just really quickly, or are we stop? Do we stop the stream and restart the other?
I can, yes.
No, you just make sure.
Just keep it going. Okay.
Actually,
I don't want something.
Let's see. Do we typically pause this, or we just leave it?
No, actually, no. No, we're good. No, we can- yeah. Yeah.
Take a cookie.
You guys don't want to stay?
Harold, take a cookie. Take a cookie.
Yeah, and that's what.
Speakers, I said. My mom and aunt wants them.
Oh, yeah.
No, I wonder if the thing did it get no, it's the microphone. So I think there's maybe that tape.
What about, oh no, but that's
Yeah, I think that's the one.
that's
Yeah.
when it's always been.
Yeah. I never looked, but it looks right. I mean, canceling.
But yeah, that and.
They all.
We're not.
Super quiet. Look about, yeah, something that's.
But talking just like this, we did the original test on it, we were around the room. You could hear it. Very loud. But, Gary is very.
Lock up our gifts.
But even before he was going to take my.
Oh, really?
Oh, really?
We're still streaming as we're just.
Yes, we are.
Find out.
Well,
We are.
figure it out the next time it's stuck there. Right. We're halfway.
That's, I think that might be. No, 30 way.
Actually, I thought it was the CIC longer than I thought, actually. I'll be honest with you, I thought it was gonna be 30 minutes. I said, well, I'm gonna do the presentation.
We'll have to talk about.
Oh, look, I can hold it. I'm gonna wave to her. I'm gonna wave to her.
Leave me alone. I don't need to get sucked into I guess so. I think it's exactly. It's so- And we're not trying to let's go. And just get that out there. I said I've been so asked to Kristen. Yeah. Oh, boy.
Yeah.
No, usually I'm gonna get up and dance. She said, leave her alone. So we don't tell her. Too late.
Yeah.
Too late.
Yes.
I did something with that. Baby, that's right. Oh, that's right, you told me that.
It's over there.
No, I will make a note of that though, for sure. Yes.
Yeah, it's funny. Well, we still gotta do it. We still gotta do it.
Right.
Yeah.
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 Maybe chocolate.
Yeah, no, I'm good, and I won't be able to talk. You go ahead. I know.
Maybe later, but thank you.
No, thank you. A sugar cookie especially, would like, just.
You pay fee to use it, and you have a designated garden bed, and they're thinking of using raised beds, which most of them do.
And you plant your own stuff?
You plant your own stuff, you weed it,
All
you
done
do,
for me.
what?
I want that all done.
Go to the farmer's market.
I'll go pick it, but I want the rest of it.
Yeah, and it'll be, there's some challenges with that, like anyway, I'm gonna try and, because I was already in conversation with some people out of Fredericton, just to kind of learn what their pains are. Because I know the last few years they've had challenges with, whether it be vandalism or, yes, and so, yeah, well,
No, it's true.
or just people starting theirs and then leaving it halfway and not maintaining it, then it's disturbing, especially for the ones that aren't raised, the ones that are all on ground and sharing paths, and then, so there's, yeah, and just garbage and just cleanup, and so there's definitely some challenges, so we want to make sure we know what we're getting into when we encourage them to.
I mean, in theory, it sounds great.
Yeah. we can hurry up.
Oh, yeah, and they've been successful everywhere, but they're not without their challenges.
Michelle Smith. Okay, I didn't recognize the third lady.
Well, we want to get, are we ready?
Whenever you, sure. Yes.
Give you 1 minute. Where's the deputy? We lost our deputy.
Oh, no, that's great. That's great.
Good question.
Maybe, CIC.
Peter, which Peter?
Is that unusual for it to?
Except he's out on leave.
Am I supposed to just step back?
I would say yes, it is unusual.
Yeah, I do too. I'm on that list.
Do you get those emails?
Right. The ones directly for Peter. Yeah, he sends them, this new group doesn't, they're not as frequent. Peter will try to send one almost
Oh, yeah.
every 2 or 3 days.
During COVID, it was amazing.
Oh, I bet. Do you need, well, we're still down our deputies. This is going to be a little, it's not really short, it's short. You better go.
I'll toss one down, you know, we're still here at midnight. I'll toss it down.
We'll have a cookie.
You want one?
No, like a 10 maybe. I'm gonna wait.
You do uppers, no problem there.
Oh, yeah.
That's the wrong one.
Yeah. Yeah. Everybody had lots to say.
Yes. That's good though. That's what you want for now. Absolutely.
Okay.
I did.
Oh, you did? Okay, I thought maybe it fell down.
It's definitely.
Did our deputy disappear?
At least you can take them away. I don't say anything.
Okay.
We'll continue with the conversation.
He hears the hammer, maybe he'll come down.
Pop your head over here, please, Counselor Bradbury, see if you can locate him. Okay. We are going to call the regular meeting of council for February 14th. Happy Valentine's Day. Anybody just joining now, or anyone that's actually still with us, to order. And I guess I do have a few opening remarks, and I'm going to try and condense them as much as possible. But I will say our council standing and special committees have all had at least one meeting, with the exception of the finance committee, and we are finalizing the terms of reference for each of the standing committees, and we hope to have those finalized this month. So we felt it was pretty important for the finance committee that we have that terms of reference done before we started, just because we are going to seek general public to help be a part of that formal committee. So we will be looking to have a couple people join us, and we'll get that information out there as soon as possible. I will say our public safety committee email is now up and running, and that's been advertised out there on our media avenues. And so it is publicsafety@town.woodstock.md.ca. We've already had some submissions, so we're off and running. Myself and three other councillors, Councillor Martin, Councillor Williams, and Councillor McCartney, took part in the Union of Municipalities of New Brunswick orientation session this last weekend. It was a 2-day session that was kind of a combo. I think it was geared mainly towards new mayors and new councillors and anyone that had a brand new entity. So I would say it was a really good learning opportunity and a networking opportunity. So I'll encourage everybody around this table, including CAO, to make sure you register if you can do it for the fall annual meeting, because that will be the entire group. I'd say this last weekend meeting was about half the numbers that will be there in the fall. It's well worth the time, and it would be the same idea probably. I think it might be Friday, Saturday, Sunday in the fall, but either way, it's well worth the time. Go ahead.
I don't
Jeff.
get it wrong, I apologize. I just hope it's on Thanksgiving weekend again this year.
No, it's in November, actually, later in November, yeah, towards the end, November 24th, I think, the weekend. So, yeah, so definitely consider attending that. I will also add in my last opening remarks, the PAC application form is now posted. So that there was a media release that went out later today on that. So we are encouraging anyone interested to apply, in particular those in new wards 1, 2, 3, and 5, because you've never had the opportunity to be a part of PAC before. So we're assuming we'll get some interest from the outside wards, and we hope. And there is a deadline for that, March 10th. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, of March 10th. So there's instruction online on how to fill out the form and how to submit it. So again, we're running long tonight, so I will keep that short.
What are just for the public to know, what are the expectations for someone on the PSC committee?
There is a document that goes along with the application that's there that kind of gives an outline of the expectations for a PAC member. So that is a part of the application package, correct?
Yes.
Clerk? But thank you, Councillor Williams, for clarifying that too. So I will move to item number 3, approval of the agenda, but I will first ask the clerk if we have any amendments, which I believe we have 2.
We do. We have 2 amendments this evening. The first amendment is to move item 8.1 to 9.1, excuse me. The second amendment is to include an additional item under section 13.2 for personnel under committee of the whole.
Okay. So if I could get someone to make a motion that the agenda for regular public council meeting dated February 14th be approved with the changes as our clerk has outlined, to move item 8.1 to 9.1 and 11.2 to 13.2. So moved by Deputy Rogers, seconded by Councillor Williams. Thank you. Moving on to item number 4. Does anybody have a declaration of conflict of interest tonight? Bingo.
Yeah, doing that on number 11.2, the fire chief stipend.
Thank you very much. So declaration by Councillor Bradbury. Okay, anyone else? That's good. So moving on to item number 5, approval of the minutes for January 24th. Do we have a motion from council for approval of the minute? Okay, move quick. So moved by, did you catch that? Councillor Graham, seconded by Bradbury.
Yes.
Councillor Bradbury. We also have approval of the minutes of the special meeting. Anybody would like to make a motion to approve those minutes? So moved by Councillor Martin, seconded. Okay, we forgot to do the vote on the first one, so we'll go back, sorry. And can everybody who is in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, and that was for approval of the minutes of January 24th. And we'll do the same now, I guess, for approval of the special meeting minutes. Everyone in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Who seconded the special minutes? Chip Bradbury.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Ever in doubt.
I did say that Lauren had his hand up, you just didn't see it fast enough. You got it.
Oh, sorry. Okay, we are moving right along. So, CAO, I guess, did we have any business arising from the minutes tonight to talk about?
There's no business arising
Okay.
either side.
Okay, and would you like to take your CAO update now?
I did. So, 3 things I'll mention. Like, first one actually was going to be the update of the fire truck. Chief will be of that, but I will just provide a little bit more where the chief and I get weekly updates, usually on a Sunday. An email comes in and included with pictures. So it's been nice to see the progress of it go through. So, like the chief said, the well testing, which is the Underwriter Laboratories, which is a third-party certification company. So they'll do their test, which they test against established standards. So, and like we said, we're fingers crossed by the end of the month we have it landed here pending a final inspection. That final inspection would be Harold and some of the staff would go up to make sure that it meets the specs. So, second one, I want to provide an update in regards to the active transportation plan and municipal zoning bylaw. If you recall, we had a presentation a while back from Stephen Stone in regards to the active transportation plan. And I believe Jennifer Brown talked a little bit about the municipal plan and zoning bylaw updates. So these projects, as we know, will require public and stakeholder engagement. So the plan is to begin the in-person engagement at or around the week of March 13th. It is anticipated that this will include 1 round of public open houses, an afternoon and an evening session. There'll be a Theater Motor Center, then interviews with key stakeholders, engagement with council, committees, and staff. That is for both. So much going on, and we want to make sure we get as many people as we can. So instead of having them out for 2 different things, we're going to combine both consultation evenings and day together. Ahead of the public engagement, they're planning to have an administrative launch of both projects. This will include the launch of a project engagement website, which is almost complete and ready to go, using the social pinpoint platform, complete with interactive mapping, engagement exercises, and online surveys. The launch will occur 2 weeks ahead of the in-person engagement. So that's in a couple weeks, because that's about a month out. The launch will include a press release outlining the project with the goal of drumming up additional awareness for these projects. Given the sensitivities with the existing planning framework, including zoning, planning designation, subdivision processes, the updates to the municipal planning and zoning bylaw will be a top priority over the active transportation fund, but that will also be completed within the terms and conditions in our funding agreement with them, which is August. So both will happen, consultation at the beginning, but then the priority will be over the zoning and municipal plan. So Stephen and Jennifer both are doing the zoning plan, where it's just Stephen doing the active transportation plan. So, any questions on that? We have, I know myself personally, and even though it's only been a couple of years since we've done this, have seen changes that I would make again. One I'll use for an example is for an R2. It used to be, I believe, 14 units, and it dropped to 6. It's not enough in my mind. I don't mind the 6 if we change it so that you could have, say, another 4 or 5 units as a conditional use, perhaps, a PAC would do. So there's some little changes like that. We're planning a visit to go to Fredericton. Found some information out this week in regards to tiny homes, and I'll share it with you folks. And it's from the city of Fredericton, and it is the
12 neighbors.
12 neighbors, which is a really interesting concept. They have had great success with it. It doesn't fit into a zone that they have, like an R1 or an R2, definitely not commercial. So they created this integrated zone. So if it doesn't fit the rest, it could go there. Of course, it has to meet the needs of, have a good fit and feel to it. But it's done by a text amendment to the zoning bylaw, much similar to what we did, like with the sale of cannabis, where it's not a rezoning, it's a text amendment. Basically, it's the same procedure, but it's basically gives council the power to have developments like that where they see fit. So, any questions on that one?
I will offer a couple of comments on that, just because the CAO and I have talked a little extensively lately on that topic, and just this is a really good opportunity with the review of this municipal plan to analyze the zones we have in the zoning bylaws, because there is, I think, potential to revisit some of the restrictions even in the BIA and in our surrounding areas to encourage development, in particular housing. So there might have been, like Andrew said, we talked about that just this morning, even though it was only a couple of years ago. Looking back, it feels like it's already 10 years old, the municipal plan in some ways. And so I think we want to look long-term at things that may come our way, like tiny homes, and understand now what we would do with them so that they're not roadblocks for people when they come. We're prepared for them. So we'll encourage council to, we got flashing going on over here. Encourage council to really kind of dig in and take a look at some of this stuff, because you will have influence over it. So go ahead, sorry, yeah, continue.
The last thing, I just wanted a couple quick updates on the projects that we've been working with. One, focus on Bellatier. We did the rezoning of that at the last meeting. Since then, actually after it happened that evening, talked with one of them, and they talked about getting the property subdivided. So they have submitted a tentative subdivision plan already for that lot, and it looks good, meets everything that I could see with the zoning bylaw. So I passed on to them to send the final one in so we can get that stamped so they can get that registered. Nice to see them keen. I've also asked for them to provide an update on the on scheduling from what their initial one was at the presentation that they did at the House months ago. And the second one is in regards to the ARC Development Group, which is the building proposed for the former Baptist church lot. So, that was it was appealed to the Planning Appeal Board. We're submitted what we had to submit, and it'll happen on March 24th. Generally, from what I have seen, I get reports back from the Brunswick Developers Association on other decisions, and usually I find 2 weeks after that. They don't make a decision that day. Usually about 2 weeks afterwards, they get it. So we're going to be a little bit earlier. That's where we thought the end of February early March, what they said, but they schedule them whenever they have things. And just worked out for the convenience of their schedule to have it at that time. And that's all I have.
That's it. All right. Anybody have any other questions for the CAO? Yes.
I said, question, the truck teams that we fired up when we go at Melba,
Yes, it is.
are we retiring one or what's the process there?
Yes, they have a, it's kind of ironic, they have a life shelf, although they're, hopefully they don't get run up and down the road very much, and fire trucks do, but not a crazy amount like, say a dump truck or something that Public Works would have, but they are, they do have a life on them. I believe though, we will have the opportunity to sell it. So that could be, I have no idea what that would bring in for revenue for us, but it is a possibility.
And besides the obvious tiny homes, is there a definition for those, like certain square footage or, I can't really know yet?
I don't have it. I just know they're small.
Yeah.
But I haven't had a chance to read all the information that the gentleman from Bergen sent me, so I don't know if they get into a specific size, no larger than or no smaller than.
Mhm.
Generally, for us now with an R1, we don't even specify. We used to sizes, but building code will dictate a lot of that.
Have they got some built already?
Oh, yes.
They've got close to 50 actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're going down to see them?
I want to go down and see it, appreciate the concept.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're building about one a week right now. Yeah.
In a certain subdivision and they're all tiny homes?
They're their own community in a sense. I know we have a long agenda tonight, but ask me after and I'll explain the concept of the 12 neighbors. And I would encourage really us all to venture down at some point. It's an impressive operation, and I'm sure as it grows, they'll, as with anything, it's probably got some growing pains because it's largely providing housing for people that were homeless or don't have. It's a subsidized housing community. So there's some very specific, that's the community it's supporting. It's not just average Joe going and building. The community itself has an organization that's building all of them. Yeah.
I'll send the information
Yeah,
to everyone so
yeah.
you have.
Okay. We ready to move to the next item? So we're going to move into our financial reports and budget discussions. I'm going to ask Kristen if she's ready to, we're on page 10. Yeah, that one's been flashing.
I know, it's really distracting.
That's weird. Just hold something
Yeah.
Does everybody have, do we know which one, are these remotes marked? Or,
The one that in your right hand is for the camera, and the one in your left is for the television.
so is it going to shut them both?
I don't know now.
Yeah, if you.
Yeah, it's going to shut them both off. I don't know, if you took a quick peek, but while he's doing that, Kristen, you might as well get started because we all can see it on our devices. And if we want to shut it off, it's fine.
Okay, so budget 2023. So I'll just start with kind of, I think you guys are all aware of the process, but just to kind of recap how it kind of all shook out for the new reform budget. Back like early last winter, there was a advisory committee that was put together. This is actually kind of, I wasn't part of the kind of the original meeting, so I don't even know exactly how they chose who they chose, but at the end of the day, it ended up being a representative from all LSDs, the prior mayor, Andrew, myself, and then there was one other, Karen Taylor, who sat on. She wasn't part of any LSDs, but just was there, I think, from past experience and knowledge that she had from going through similar type things. So the meetings were happening every week. There was, a variety of topics, even the name and those sort of things. And then as things kind of progressed, the budget conversation started to happen. So at the end of the day, prior mayor, prior council had no say in what ended up being budgeted, what the tax rates were, and so on. Basically, the province had final say. They signed off on it all, and that's who we worked with closely on getting it finalized. So I'm not going to get too granular here is kind of keep it high level. However, if there is any specific questions, obviously happy to answer them. I did provide in the package the ward breakdown and how it kind of makes up the now new municipality. So there is total non-tax revenue of almost $1.7 million with a total budget of $15.3 million, less the community funding and equalization grant of $830,000, which meant we needed to fund from our tax warrants $12.799 million. So again, that was what we needed to come up with our tax rate per assessment to fund our budget for the year. I guess actually before I get into the tax rates, I'll talk about kind of the another part of, I guess, what we talked about at the advisory level is what we're going to deem shared services versus local services. So as one of the reports that I put in by department specifies whether or not it was deemed a shared service or local service. So that just means that fire, for example, is a shared cost across the board. Every single ward is paying the exact same rate as the other for those services. And fire, obviously, that makes sense, is something that the LSDs were paying us to do anyway. So again, kind of a no-brainer. Police, local service, the RCMP contracts are still in place for all LSDs. So again, the municipal police force only servicing Ward 4, and that's a local service. So again, Ward 4 is the only residents that are paying for that service. And then we go on Air Motor Center, local service. This one was a topic of conversation. Honestly, in initial conversations, even with the province, it was kind of that it made sense for that to become a shared service because it had really been deemed a shared service in the past, in the fact that the LSDs, other than Upper and Lower Northampton, had been paying 6.5 cents on their tax rate to go towards funding the Air Motor Center. However, honestly, it was going to create such a high tax increase for the LSDs or the wards that it kind of got shot down, that we basically couldn't do that. So it's staying for this year a local service, which means, as you see again in this departmental report, that it's approximately $1 million deficit that the Air Motor Center has been running a year that the existing, or the Ward 4, the prior town of Woodstock, has been funding over the years. Planning and development, shared service. So this one was an opportunity that could have gone to the RSC. We kept that for ourselves. Library, shared service. Recreation, local service. Transportation, local service. So again, because DTI is still doing the wards, which also in the tax rate. So the total tax rate we don't get for the wards, 41 cents of the tax rate that the resident, well, actually we have all tax rates go straight to the province to pay the DTI expenses. So we only get the net of that tax rate. Tourism and community assets, shared service, local government shared service, animal control, local service, environment health, which is basically just garbage, local service, fiscal services, which is like basically debt type things. Also, that's where like prior year surpluses would be. That is a local service as well. So it kind of breaks down how things are there. And then, so for tax rates, and I know that the province had, actually, no, I don't want to go there yet. I want to talk just about this still. So with the assessment increases, that's kind of something we've also heard a lot of talk about, is that the assessments were going up. So the new municipality versus last year had tax-based growth of 8.93%, which with the 1.7 ratio that we went for non-residential actually gave us $1.3 million more tax revenue than the LSDs and Woodstock combined would have gotten in prior year, which sounds like a lot of money. And we actually were maybe naively optimistic at the beginning too, to think that we were going to have a windfall of money and we were going to be able to pay all the roads and so on. However, as the budget was being done and things were happening with inflation and that sort of thing, things changed. So I'm just going to go over kind of a few things that impacted the fact that we used up that $1.3 million, pretty quickly. So the wages both union contracts that we have. So there's two unions that we are currently part of. They both had 3% increases that we had to build in. Some new hires. There's 5 new hires that are built into the general fund. One was Laura's position, so she started in December, so wouldn't have been part of last year, and then 4 additional that are expected to be hired this year. Debt, the debenture on the Air Motor Center retrofit will be drawn this year, so we will have additional principal and interest payments that we will need to pay. Council and legislative expenses, again, as everybody's aware, the cost of the stipends for council increased. And the cost of assessment to the province, we pay 1.72% of our tax warrant to the province as a cost of assessment. And then again, inflation, like everybody has seen personally, and private enterprises are seeing as well. Inflation had really hurt us. Fuel was crazy. And from talking to, like Peter Clark and I had conversations during budget that he wasn't optimistic that things were going to really come down much, and we're seeing potential diesel going at $3, that we had to be proactive and make sure that we were budgeting enough to offset those costs if necessary. So fuel was a huge one, even fuel surcharges that we're seeing on the things that we need, like the salt and sand and things that we have to be hauled in. These went up. Power was anticipating a 9% increase. So again, had to build that in. And then there's just like chlorine and other costs of supplies that I know that Greg has talked about. I mean, this would be the utility fund, but just in general, that cost of things that he is used to buying just have skyrocketed, and it really hurt. Like basically that ate that $1.3 million up very, very quickly. And again, just to kind of summarize, like public works budget, and well, I guess actually transportation, not talking utility here, went up $300,000 over prior year. Police went up $575,000 over prior year. Fire, $100,000. Development and planning, $170,000. In general government, $475,000. And the sum of that is $1.6 million. So just there, that is over the 1.3 million that we got because of the assessment increase. And I wanted to go into variances over for every kind of section and department, actually looking at apples to apples with what it would have been as a sum of the Ward and the Woodstock together, but it just wasn't able to happen because we didn't get all of Woodstock or Wakefield LSDs, so I couldn't try to pull out parts of it anyway. It was getting convoluted, so I was unfortunately not able to provide kind of. So those increases I just talked about were strictly just Woodstock over Woodstock, Ward 4 over Ward 4. Okay, so now we'll go into the tax rates. So I'm sure it was very kind of surprising when these numbers were sent out. So I'll just kind of go over the increases. So the Ward 4, the prior town of Woodstock, had so it looks no change what Trina did kind of point out to me earlier today that there were 2 smaller subsections of Woodstock outside, I think it was outside, and the industrial park that were always usually at a 1.4. We increased them to 5 cents to put everybody at the 1.5, so that we did actually get a small increase of additional warrant from those sections of Woodstock. So they stayed basically the same other than those 2 small portions. Ward 5 went from $1.004 to 1.2029, an increase of 11.51 cents. Ward 2 went from $1.016 to $1.1638, an increase of 8.01 cents. Ward 3 went from 0.9946 cents to 1.1767 cents, an increase of 10.91 cents. Ward 1 went from $1.09, $0.0910 to $1.2118, an increase of 0.33 cents. And Ward 5 went to 90.9504 cents to 1.2072 cents, an increase of 17.12 cents. And that's the one that really kind of stands out as the real high one, and that is because they never had been paying the 6.5 cents towards the intermodal center, so that you back that off and it is more in line with the other. But we just felt that to keep things consistent, and again, if every other, we're talking, equality across the town, and wanting to make sure that people are getting the same services, that it just made sense for them to start paying that 6.5 cents towards them too. So that got built into the Ward 5 Upper and Lower Northampton tax rate. So I did also provide kind of a net change for the awards and what created the increase or decrease. So there were some things that actually created the tax rates to go down because of the increased assessment. So that's kind of the things that that the LSDs or the wards have been paying for historically, like RCMP, for example, that it had the reform not happened, their RCMP costs would have dropped their tax rate because of the assessment. That makes sense. But then there were things that increased it. So the fire, so it was actually that there were some wards that were paying more for their fire as an LSD cost than what they're paying as a shared cost. And then the other way, that they're paying quite a bit less. So it increased their tax rate. And this also does include, there's already an agreement that the LSDs were going to pay 1/10 of the fire truck over, I guess over 10 years, so $60,000 per year is included in here. So an additional $60,000 over the awards for the payment for their share of the fire truck. And again, just kind of sticking out, the main kind of increases here are the general government administrative at about 6 cents across the board, and tourism and community assets at about, well, I guess it was because it's a shared service, the same 2.5 cents. So those ones again over 8 to 9 cents of the increases are from those two shared services. And then I guess while we're still talking about tax rates, I did provide printed out. It didn't go into the package. Again, this was something that Trina thought would be good to put to bring to people's attention. So I did put the printout that what these costs, the tax rate increases actually kind of quantify into for a residential property tax. So this does also, of the residential property tax that is paid, 0.0194 cents of that goes to the province. So this does include that. So this is a real what a resident would pay based on, so I did it as $200, $250, $300, and $350,000 assessments. So for example, Ward 5, which was the highest one, at a $350,000 assessed house would pay $600 more for the year on the property tax. Ward 3, which was one of the lower increases, again on a $350,000 house would pay $382. So this is just kind of shows how, like in dollar figures, how this is going to impact the residences. And then I guess the last point I was going to kind of talk about, I guess, just the utility fund, which again only does currently impact Ward 4. It didn't change drastically over prior year. We did expect to change the rate. So this is based on prior rates. We haven't changed anything for this purpose for kind of the plans there. So there could be increased revenue due to the plan we go at, but things kind of kept pretty consistent there with expected revenue of 1.85 million and expenses of 1.6 million, and then capital budget of $249,000, which I guess that's what I missed in the general fund, is that the capital budget for the general fund was $688,000, which again seems like a decent amount of money, except for we had earmarked $340,000 for the fire trucks. So that actually only leaves $348,000 to kind of meet all the capital needs for all the departments, again, on utility to be done throughout the year. And as Greg kind of talked through some numbers out there, it's, gets eaten up quickly. So I guess that's my spiel, but.
So let's give Kristen's voice a little break. And because I have a few comments that I want to make too, and please don't chime me, Deputy Mayor, because there's a few minutes worth, and I have already cut it down. So, but that'll it'll add a little bit more context from my perspective, and a chance for Kristen's voice to rest, and then you can ask questions of everyone, and then we'll toss it to the CAO after me in case he wants to add anything else. But so first, just thank Kristen for the reports. It's a lot of work to kind of pull all of this stuff together, seeing as how we just got the final numbers and tax rates and everything confirmed a few weeks ago. So it's a lot to absorb. So again, I doubt there's anyone still listening, but anyone that's still listening other than Jim, we know that there's still likely going to be a lot of questions moving forward. So I like to consider tonight the start of a long-term conversation and an ongoing conversation on budgeting and asset management. So we'll continue over the coming weeks and months to answer questions that you will receive, because I'm sure you will get some. So it'll be ongoing. But I do want to note a couple of things in regards to tax rate increases on the business side. As Kristen noted, the business tax rate increase did provide us with a fairly hefty influx. And as every resident is struggling right now with inflation, so is every business. So I do want to note the province with reform gave the municipalities this year for the first time the opportunity to change that rate. It was always consistently 1.5, $1.50, I should say, per $100 of assessment, in the provincial government now has opened that up for the municipalities to go between 1.4 and 1.7. So as everybody was working through the budgeting process, every community was leaning towards going to the $1.70 range. And that was fairly consistent across the province. We took that opportunity. I say we, it was not us, but council wasn't involved in that. But the decision was made to go that high, which is a fairly substantial increase for year over year for businesses. But I will say the province, I think, recognized that was going to happen. And instead of phasing in a 2-year planned non-residential tax reduction, they did it all this year. So I do want to note for non-residential properties, they reduced the tax rate by 15%. And for non-owner occupied residences, so apartments and whatnot, if somebody has a second home, that is reduced by 50% this year. So those are substantial reductions on the provincial tax rate side. And just so everybody understands, the tax rate that was noted for in this report, in Kristen's reports for businesses and non-residential properties, I should say, is only part of the tax warrant, right? So the rest comes from the province. So they almost double what businesses pay in the end. So the reduction on the other side, I do feel, even though most businesses may see an assessment increase this year, because they've done that reduction, I do think it probably has offset, so that most businesses will find they don't see an overall increase in what they're actually paying. So hopefully that works out for most businesses, because the advantage was certainly taken from the municipality here. So as we've said before, budgeting this year was kind of like no other year, and council wasn't involved in the budgeting process. And again, though I would have been looking at everything, maybe suggested some different things be done, we cannot change the tax rate and we cannot change the budget that's been approved. So we're going to work with what we have this year. Kind of end of story there. And I understand that no one ever wants to pay more than they have to for any service. And I think we can accept that there's probably a limit on what people are willing to pay for any service that we offer. But in the municipal world, as we know, we cannot run a deficit. We're not like the province or the federal government. We have to run, and we can't run a huge surplus either. So we're to run a budgeted, we need to budget evenly. So I guess, as Chris mentioned, though we increased our tax assessment base drastically, it quickly got eaten up by inflation and increased costs and some of our delivery costs increases, and then new costs from. So I guess when I was campaigning, I was asked by a lot of people in the LSD areas, what's in it for me and what am I going to get out of any increased taxes? And most people anticipated that there would be some. So at that point in time, I said the same thing to everyone, and I'll repeat it here tonight. I guess I would encourage everyone to look at it from the opposite way. If we didn't start sharing costs, inevitably we're going to have to cut services, or at minimum reduce the level of service standards, including in policing, fire protection, recreation, infrastructure, and any of the other community-based projects and fundings that we want to do for our community. So when we're talking about where the province was trying to go with this, it is to help have everybody being contributing to the overall expenses together. And I will say, in analyzing, and the report is up now, by the way, on the local government reform website for all of the tax rates across the province. So I'll encourage you guys to take a look through that. You can see how we compare with every other entity in the province. And I will say we're pretty either even or under what the average is, especially for areas that compare in size to us. And when we look at some areas, even within our region, we probably still are paying less, but we're offering a whole lot more. If I look at Lakeland Ridges, for example, we would compare right now with what they're going to pay for what their tax rates are, but they don't have facilities such as we do and a police force and things like that. So when I look at everything all in, I do feel like even though there are some major increases, and I look at Ward 5 and the dollar value increase year over year, it is probably painful for a lot of residents. But at the end of the day, we do need to get there, and this year's budgeting certainly kind of took us a leap forward in that direction. So again, when we have limited means to balance our budget, especially in years like this where we see a lot of increases across the board, we have, we can increase tax rates, which we did in some cases. We can also, as a community, decide to cut or reduce services. We can borrow, we can seek funding, and we can grow our tax base. So I guess what I will say moving forward is we must get better at analyzing all of these options and planning for the future. So when we're looking at, after this year, we will control the budget, thankfully, moving forward. We need to do a good job at analyzing the services and the service levels that we offer. And are there trade-offs that need to be made so that we can keep tax rates manageable and affordable? So I guess we talk a little bit about what I feel that means for us moving forward. It means this year, we're going to do a lot, try and do a lot this year, but we're going to do spend a lot of time, I guess, this year analyzing our service standards and services to help determine if we do need to make adjustments. It also means the finance committee is going to help our finance department tackle year-round budgeting. It needs to become a staple. The second the calendar flips, we need to be looking at the next year's budget, simply put. So we will have a finance committee in place, and hopefully some capable people on that committee that are willing to help do that. It also means we need to develop a robust asset management plan so that we can ensure we have a handle on our current infrastructure and service costs before we decide to add more and also when we decide to add any additional services. We also need to develop 5 and 10-year plans for infrastructure upgrades and ensure the decisions we are making today, which we heard a lot on the weekend, are taking into consideration climate change, population growth, and for what easy terms, what we might need under the ground and on the ground 30, 40, 50 years from now. So we need to be looking that far down the road when we're making decisions, so we're making good decisions. And we also need to ensure we are following our municipal plan when we're prioritizing our capital expenditures and when planning for large investments, that we are budgeting appropriately, moving forward to reserve funds. So we don't always have to borrow, and that there's an objective there that, this year I would say with the government not leaving us any capital room, it's largely because we didn't have projects that were set aside, designated with reserve funds. So that was it. Once we met our budgetary goals, they don't just throw us extra money for no reason. So that's kind of where we landed this year. So I think next year we'll have to be a little more clever and careful in how we're going to use reserve funds to help us fund big projects like building new buildings and things. And I guess I would say, I wish the CAO and I tonight could outline everything that we plan to do this year, but that is not going to happen. I guess when we've had lots of conversations around budget constraints and budget challenges, and Greg slipped a little in here tonight that we were hoping might not have maybe surfaced, because you can already tell just from one conversation and a couple of asks that if we only had $384,000 to play with this year, it gets chewed up quickly. And so I think what the goal is next is that we recognize that we're going to have to make some really tough decisions this year. So we are going to do full council and staff strategic planning session. And I think we've already set the date for that as March 14th. So I'm looking forward to that. I think it's necessary that we make sure, and they need to understand what we see as the direction as council and what we know our community members are looking for. So please take the next few weeks before that to talk to your constituents and ask them what they see is important, because that may help guide us in some of the tough decisions we're going to make. Whether in all of the, opportunities we're going to have with the municipal plan, I think probably with the public forums there will be opportunity for us to hear in general what, our community is looking for. So again, as soon as we can communicate and those decisions are made, and we know the CAO's update that week will be ginormous. So it'll be the CAO show that night. And I'm hoping by mid-March, we will have a better idea of what the Canada Community Building Fund amount is going to be, because the province should have numbers out hopefully in March, which that number for us could be substantial. We just don't know. And yes, we probably have some things already earmarked, but at least it is potential extra revenue for us. So what that amount is, we'll hope to know by then too. So I will say, on the note of asset management, we are currently in the process of reviewing on our end, a draft asset management policy for the town, because we don't have one today. So council will have a chance to review that in the near future, and ultimately we'll need to approve it. So we'll put our red stamp on it, so to speak, and it will serve as a guide moving forward and a commitment as a community and as the town for how we're going to handle the management of all of our assets moving forward. So phase one of, say, a 2-phased approach is largely done based on reform. It was required. So we already have a pretty, I would say, up-to-date list of all of our assets, and phase 2, which is required by the province, is the next step. And it can be a big task to take on. So phase 2 basically requires that we are looking at all of the assets we have and where they are in their life cycle. So you heard the CAO earlier tonight say the word life cycle and talking with Greg with Public Works. And that's the idea is now we've got to do an analysis and study and plan where in the life cycle all of our assets are, so we know what type of funding we're going to need in the coming years for any that need to be repaired, replaced, obsoleted or made obsolete, however, upgraded, you name it. So we really kind of need to move forward with that phase 2. And it is, like I said, required by the province that we do that. I do think our deadline for that is the end of 2024. And it's probably going to take us a substantial amount of time to do that. And I know maybe the CAO after I talk can speak a little more on resources, but along with the, let's say, limited capital funds, we also have limited funds in operations. So it's not like if we feel like we don't have the resource to put to kind of generating all this information, gathering all this information for us, there's not necessarily any money this year to hire someone. So we're going to have to look at that as well. And is there funding elsewhere that we might be able to outsource someone to do part of that for us this year or next? So I'd like to say phase 2 will be done for this budgeting year, but it will not. Also, again, I think in closing, if anybody's timing me, I think it's important for everyone to understand that this is, again, the start of an ongoing conversation around budgeting and asset management. So I'll leave with these final thoughts before we pass it to the CAO. I think everyone wants a good quality of life, a safe, healthy, and active community, but quality of life is more than just roads and infrastructure. We could fill potholes till the cows come home, and if that's all anybody ever wanted, our lives would be pretty simple. But I think we need to continue to plan and budget to aim for a balance of services. So that includes recreation, arts and culture, beautification and downtown projects, and more. So I do feel with proper planning moving forward, we'll achieve a good balance eventually. I just think for this next 2 to 3 years, we might have to make some really tough interim decisions on what is a priority. And we'll need to do that so that so that our end result isn't always we have to raise taxes. I'm hoping that we can get away from that with proper planning and looking at everything. So I guess that's what I have to say.
Can
CAO wants.
There's something that I missed on my notes here. But
I just reminded you.
Well, so I'm sure that everybody heard in the news and from the provincial that there's going to be a 5-cent cap on tax rates. So I just wanted to speak to that because obviously that did not happen. They did implement a 5-cent cap. However, there were many exceptions to the rule, and it was any shared service, any cost that would have been incurred regardless of the reform, any of the mandated services, so the RSC basically, and any changes in the community funding and equalization grant. So basically everything. So that's where that kind of it wasn't kind of the case. So I did just want to point out in case that was a question of how this kind of went through with that message out there.
CAO, you got any comments?
I don't have much more to add between after the two we spoke, but I mean, I'll just say it was a long, hard process. I mean, sometimes we get advice from the groups, and it could have been a lot worse.
Yeah.
Really, as far as tax rates, it could have been. It wasn't easy to do. I tell you one thing, I'm so glad Kristen's here, because I know I did it last year and there's not a chance I would have done it this year, figure it out, but she put in a lot of time, a lot of work that made us be able to meet. We were the only ones that ever met deadlines. We got deadlines like crazy from the province that they promised us stuff, but never met once. We were always ahead of time, so and a lot of that has to do with the time that Kristen put into it. So Thanks for that. But the strategic session that we're going to have in March is going to be important. You may not think it will be long because of the amount of capital money that's there, but that could make it that much more difficult because, you know, the department heads are an excellent group with that. We proved that last year when we did the capital. We got together and discussed it as a whole, came with the top items and the sacrifices that some would do to help the other was evident. It's going to be a lot harder this year. There's a lot of demands on, policing, reports of policing to make sure that they get the stuff that they need. But it doesn't make it any less important than anything that comes from recreation. And then, of course, you can't get to those facilities if you don't have the good streets and the equipment to allow you to get there. So it's going to be interesting. So I'll maybe have more cupcakes that night.
Might need more than cupcakes.
Yeah. I'll give you back one of those ones. That's all I have for this day.
So does anyone have any questions or thoughts right now? It's a lot to absorb, I know, but I'm sure we'll open the floor to council.
I have one.
Go for it.
So in Ward 5, you have an upper and a lower, down Northampton. Where is that divided line?
Yes, we do know. I mean, I don't know right off the top, but
Yeah, there is a map that would show the two.
I think so.
Maybe, yeah.
geography's not mine forte, but it definitely.
Would it
is
be
out
helpful though for you to have that map? Yeah.
So that- and that's-
I seen a number of
Okay.
versions of the map, and they've all been really terrible, except for the one that Dylan actually just did. I know, Dylan has a really good one. But,
And it is a bit confusing for your ward because it was two LSDs that have come together to make one ward, and again, they had different tax rates, and so for this year, I know there's also conversation of do we just make all wards, because they are now getting the same service, have it straight across the board, same tax rate for them. So those conversations were had during the advisory committee meetings, or some of them. But again, the province did suggest that we kind of just built on the prior year's tax rate, and then council in future years can make that decision if they want to just make it all one. But until they are one, or if that ever happens, we'll always have them kind of as subunits like this. So that's why it is kind of confusing for your ward.
So as far as services go, what services are the wards going to be provided with this budget?
Council. That's the main one. Again, that's the biggest cost that they're getting. General government services, I would say, is the.
Well, anything deemed shared
Yeah.
service that they didn't think they were getting before, they're getting now. So we do need to talk and think broader. Anything we deemed a shared service has been deemed a shared service in every entity in this province. We are not the only ones dealing with this. And if anybody was sitting at the tables on the weekend, we certainly aren't in the worst position. There are lots of areas that are struggling with a lot of issues in how they got combined and acquiring assets. I'll use Arcadia, for example. They used a very good, they're a population of 3,800. They're the size of Mississauga, and they have five full functioning fire halls. So there's lots of areas that are struggling with how do we work this all out? So I do feel ours is relatively clean. Where people will struggle is, well, what did I get from it? And again, part of it is what we're all going to lose if we don't. So in reality, not everybody uses our services equally, whether we live in town or whether we live in Ward 5, Ward 1, Ward 2, Ward 3. I live in Ward 4, but I don't use the same services that just like anyone in your ward. So I think arguably that's the whole point of this, is that in reality, the service is there. We need to offer services in order to grow our community in town and hope that it's viable long term. So everybody's got to start to pitch in order to be able to keep them. And policing is a big one. We offer 24/7 policing in town. And if there's ever a notion to expand that or to maintain that, we want to keep that 24/7 service. That's what distinguishes us today from the RCMP. So we want to be, I think, hopefully help explain to people what those shared services items are, which this report does show you what are now deemed shared services. And we, I think, were the only entity that didn't just outright share all their services. We kept the air motor debt within Ward 4. I would say cautiously that as we graduate forward through the next 3 or 4 years, we will try and blend out of that. And as the debt that we owe on those, and we'll get into more conversations about that later. We do have debts that we will pay off this year. We have debts that we're going to pay off in the next 4 or 5 years that are going to make a significant impact on what we owe. But we also know there's a whole bunch of things we need to do moving forward that are going to cost as many millions as we owe today. So I would encourage everyone to kind of analyze that and make sure you understand what is considered a shared service. Because regardless of whether somebody uses it or not, the word shared is there for a reason.
Well, and I think too that all the things that were deemed shared services. So again, the library was always there to be used. It's just that it was only the Ward 4 who were paying towards it. So I think the point of that was the point, was to have more people, more hands, people feeding into the pot so that the money is there to help kind of improve things and continue the services. So really the only kind of the new one that they wouldn't have been paying for in the past or wouldn't have been really getting any value from would have been the general government kind of type stuff that we can now do. But the other services, again, were always, I think, available to be used. It's just there was nothing kind of going towards them. And I think that's also kind of not the argument, but when I know that Councillor McCartney asked me that she had been getting questions about the Woodstock or the Ward 4 staying the same and how could that happen with the inflation and stuff. But because of basically the shared services, there are people paying for some services like the library. The library budget barely changed. However, we have four other wards now chipping in to that cost, which the town of Woodstock or the Ward 4 had been paying for in the past. So because they kind of moved that funds over, then that is how kind of things were shaking out in that regard.
Like the RSC, but it's another.
Yes, the RSC is definitely a new.
That would be a large, like economic development, tourism, which are things that we had to pay into regardless if we did it or not. There's some of probably your larger ones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the RSC, one of the exciting things about the RSC is that it's going to be regional tourism, which I think is a really exciting prospect because now it's not going to be just us or Toby trying to bring events to Woodstock. We could maybe start doing festivals that include like Nakawik and Canterbury and Heartland and things like that to bring people to our whole region. I think it's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
When you mentioned the library, I think in your report you said there's no revenue. So when they have these functions or meetings or
the library is a
they
complicated.
don't charge for that.
They do, but the library, there's some parts of it that I'm still trying to get my head wrapped around, but basically we own the building and we own the contents and that's it. So the province pays all the wages, the province, they own the books too. We own the bookshelf, they own the books. We own the computers and the desks, but they
own the data in the
yeah, it's a very strange, and I know that in conversations with Jennifer at the library, like even with her, because there's the town that is part of the budget, and then there's the province that's part of the budget, and then they also have a library board. So she also is kind of working with 3 different groups of people. So it is very, but yeah. So no, that revenue is potential.
So but they do charge rental fees for different things to go on.
I'm assuming, yeah.
Because they're doing it in our building,
Mm-hmm.
down on the building, and we're not getting any revenue from the records. But they must be honest.
Yeah.
We don't- Why is the province getting the revenue from a rental?
And maybe I don't know 100% sure because
I still don't know if they charge.
Yeah, I don't
If
either,
they
but-
do, we're not getting it, who's getting it?
Yeah, I will note, as we were talking and Councillor McCartney's name come up, we forgot to note that she is absent tonight. And I will say, they have their first library meeting board because she's our liaison on that board this week. So that is a question that has been posed to her to start to look at and look into is, please help us understand what is happening there. And if we're charging for one service in one of our facilities and it's being offered for free in a different facility, that's probably a bit of an awkward conflict. And so at the end of the day, I don't feel we understand what's really truly happening there. So it is on kind of her radar, and that's part of her when we do our first call for committee reports. And I'm hoping she'll be able to shed a little bit of light on that for us because it's a valid question. Fair? Anybody else have any questions? We still have a bit of an agenda.
I just think, I would thank Kristen for putting this together because I'm not the most financially minded person, but I think get this. Appreciate your work.
I'm glad to hear.
It's very good. Okay, so are we good to move on from finance? Last call, feel free.
I'm sure more questions.
Yeah, yes, and like we said, this is the first of many. Okay, so before we move on from this category, though, we do have to, we do want to accept Kristen's wonderful financial reports as record. So if I could get a motion from somebody to accept the financial report submitted by the Director of Finance as presented. So we had Councillor Leach.
Yes.
And we'll say Councillor Bellier on the
Okay.
second.
These buzzers. I've said that for years.
It's on the
Oh,
budget,
boy.
Jeff.
So we'll move next on to correspondence. And we do have one piece of correspondence. And
Yes.
Laura, are you going to be kind enough to read that for us?
I sure will. Great. So. Okay. Your Worship, Town Council, and Rec Department. I wanted to bring to your attention my positive experience at the tennis tournaments in Woodstock over the past few years. They are exemplary in sportsmanship, friendliness, and great play. The organization works very hard to make sure these tournaments are a success. They draw players from other parts of the province, and it is such a great way for others to experience great tennis, exceptional sportsmanship, as well as the beauty of such a remarkable town. I had the great pleasure of playing sports in Woodstock. As you know, the sports attitude in Woodstock maintains a certain unique flavor, a mixture of talent and great sportsmanship. As a fortunate Woodstock athlete, I played under the legendary Joe McGuire, who instilled in all of us the importance of hard work, fair play, and being a good human. For me, attending a tennis tournament in Woodstock is very representative of this positive mindset. It is like going back in time with these same values. I call it the Woodstock way. According to Tennis Canada, tennis is becoming a leading sport in Canada. Last year, 6.5 million Canadians hit the courts, and there has been a 36% increase in frequent tennis play over the past 2 years. There's a website noted in Jean's correspondence. It's just www.tenniscanada.com. In order to join this momentum, the McKinley Memorial Courts need attention. With any sport, the foundation is so very important. The presentation of well-serviced courts would be beneficial to inspire folks to participate, maintain the players that are active, and also increase participation at all levels. Resurfaced courts would also put Woodstock in the bidding for hosting regionals as well as provincial tournaments. These tournaments draw big crowds, and this would be beneficial for the tourism of the town as well. Successful post-COVID environments seem to require a different heart and an intentional, accommodating approach. As stated in the article, pandemic impact on girls in sports. 1 in 4 girls are not committed to return to sports post-COVID-19. This means a negative impact on mental health, physical health, and a lack of social connection. Organizations can change this by intentionally creating a sense of belonging and taking away anything that causes people to not do their best. This is not only for girls, but for everyone during this unsettling time. An attractive surface on the tennis courts would be inviting to all age levels and encourage more people to participate in a healthy, fun sport. She's also noted another website as sheisactivenb.ca/resources. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to express my gratitude for the hard work behind these successful Woodstock tournaments. Also, thank you for allowing me the platform to suggest the importance of resurfacing the courts. I am looking forward to playing in more tournaments as well as encouraging others to join in on these admirable endeavors. This unique sportsmanship model is a big drawing card as well as the beauty of Woodstock itself. Sincerely, Jean M. Dunning of Victoria Street in Fredericton.
Okay, so I think we're all well aware of, maybe some of the new councilors aren't as aware of the tennis court issue, but those discussions will happen, I think, during our strategic session. But for today, I think we just agree to receive this into correspondence and leave it at that, or somebody going back. Okay, and so, yeah, okay, sorry, the flowers, yes. Which I have. Okay, so moving on to new business. We do have a tender for flowers, as Kelly mentioned to us earlier. So do we need to, can I just read the motion, or do you want to talk about it?
Yeah, as it was, Kelly mentioned earlier, there was only one submission. There was 3 that were asked to submit, but only one submitted. So we'd have 3.
Mhm.
So there's just the one from Van Dyke. So it's still a tender, so it still has to be awarded by council.
Okay, so I think everybody had that in front of them. If I could get a motion to award the flower tender to Van Dyke's Greenhouse in the amount of $2,732.91 plus HST as recommended by Laura Gaddis. Anybody want to move that? Deputy Mayor. Seconded by Councillor Bradbury. Everybody ready for the question? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary, nay. Motion passed. Motion carried. Okay, so you can stay. 11.2, just a sec. Well, I guess you can go if you want for the discussion of it. That's fine. The CAO, we're moving 11.2 to committee of the whole to chat about, but the CAO was going to offer a couple remarks about what it is we're looking at tonight in case we do bring it back to a motion and make a motion on it tonight.
So after we left the last time, it was council wanted Kristen and myself to get together to discuss the fire chief statement, and we did so, and we come up with a couple other things. One I wasn't even aware of, so glad that we did the homework on it. More so in regards to, that's why we can bring this to committee of the whole, inside and outside. Was how the volunteers were being paid. Well, now there is technically no outside; it's all inside. But we like to have a little discussion on how that will work, so it's still fair for the volunteers. Anything else, Kristen, you want to?
Not at this point.
Okay, so we can hold that. Other than that, I guess the date of our next meeting will be February 28th, and I guess we will move into the committee of the whole next. Everybody's still alive and kicking. I need a motion for that.
Yeah, to committee. We could adjourn and then go to committee of the whole.
Aren't you supposed to leave?
We adjourn.
Yes.
So before anybody moves around, as you go ahead, Councillor Bradbury, could I have a motion to adjourn? by Counselor Williams. Anybody want to second that?
Quick, just answer both.
We got Counselor Brown.
Beautiful, thank you.
All in favor, I guess you can signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody contrary, nay? Motion carried. Adjourned. It's been a long night. We're not done yet.